Today we're speaking with Benjamin, who recently went through Tech Sales Ascension. He didn't have a college degree. He had lots of different experiences that prior to our course he struggled to put together in a meaningful way. And in addition to learning about his experience with numerous different courses before ours and also some of the challenges he faced in interviews, I know you're going to get a lot out of it if you're in a similar situation. Thanks for joining in. We're really excited to speak with Ben, who just went through Tech Sales Ascension. Ended up getting 3 different offers and ultimately chose to work for Outreach, a great company in the sales engagement platform space. Lots to talk about today, not only just your experience breaking in, but also your background, as you've done a couple of cool things before breaking into tech sales. But Ben, would kick it over to you, maybe starting with Outreach, right? Walk us through the process you just went through and why you ultimately chose Outreach.
Yeah, so it was kind of a crazy journey, joining Tech Sales Extension after doing a couple different tech sales courses. But, ultimately I got 3 different offers with a couple different companies, including Outreach, Podium, and Connect as well. Personally, I just felt like Outreach is a well-positioned product and it's a leader in its industry. So I was just excited to be a part of a company where I can start off right at the bat and get that great experience and get great sales training from a leading company. Kind of talking about my background, though, I've actually came from the autonomous vehicle operating space, and I was previously actually a Lyft driver and didn't finish my degree. I dropped out my senior year to take care of my parents, but I did have sales experience in outbound and inbound, from everything from being a Kirby vacuum salesperson to financial advising. So it's kind of a crazy career path that I've been on. I've started a company and just really needed to find a career path where I felt like I could use my skills to the best of my abilities to get the most income potential for me personally. And I felt like that would be an account executive, enterprise account executive down the line. But yeah, I was kind of a little nervous about the process, but I'm glad that I, ran into the course because I felt like I was able to adjust my background a little bit and position it so that I looked like a strong candidate versus other people would probably take some of that experience and it could be viewed negatively. But yeah, just glad I got the offer at Outreach and thankful for the course.
That's awesome. No, and I think I'm curious on a few fronts, right? Like you mentioned all these different, both sales, Lyft experience, starting your own business, right? And maybe more tactically for people that are in that situation where they're coming from a different career, breaking into tech sales. I'm sure we could talk about this for hours, but maybe in a slightly concise way. Like, how do you take all of that? How did the course maybe prepare you to package that and leverage that successfully in interviews, et cetera, right?
Yeah, so one of the things that helped me the most for the course was it was broken down into different sections where I could work on my resume, LinkedIn, and when I got to the interview stages, I hadn't done any prep yet. So what I did is actually use some of the examples provided in the course, watched it, saw how you gave examples of through going through the recruiter process. I watched your video on that. And then also there was multiple other interviews with other people like Chris and Ian. So you can get different perspectives that could really match with what you're trying to do. And I just tailored that to, my background, and really it was able to basically have me answer questions in a way where it positions myself as a stronger candidate. And yeah, I just basically broke it down like that and was able to come up with answers and stories based on my past experience that were similar to the examples given in the course.
Maybe even like taking a step back, just really quickly, maybe for the people out there, like I'm curious, like what led you to tech sales in the first place? Like obviously I hear of a lot of people coming into tech sales from a lot of different backgrounds. Obviously you have a very unique background, but what led you to that decision? I think there's a lot of people out there probably evaluating tech sales. Obviously like you're in of itself like a symbol that you can do it and you can accomplish it regardless of whatever background that you come from. You've got all this myriad of different experience, but like maybe for some of the people out there, like why did you choose tech sales? You were talking about enterprise account executive, but what is it about tech sales that like gets you interested, that gets you hooked?
Yeah, so I kind of left sales 2.5 years ago, and I was kind of lost a little bit after failing at starting a artist management company. And that's when I ultimately became a Lyft driver. And I landed into a role at a company with autonomous vehicles and self-driving and really rediscovering that passion of tech. But when I first got to that company, the first thing I did was to see if there was a position in sales, and there was not. So I was kind of missing that aspect of sales, and I really felt that my skill sets are really suited to be successful hitting sales targets and goals. And just kind of was exploring options at the time. I don't have an engineering background or a degree. And currently at the company I was with previously, that would be the best way to promote within, would be to have that background to become like a technical program manager or, you know, a senior engineer. So I kind of was lost on what career path I could take in the tech industry, was looking at multiple options like, you know, cybersecurity, IT, and just kind of seeing what options were out there. And I stumbled upon actually a couple videos by Eric and also a couple other influencers as well. And I was like, I could definitely, you know, do this with my past experience. I'm very technical as well. So I feel like it was just a myriad. It just kind of like, it was just a good combination of my skill sets to be successful in that role. And also seeing the income potential as well was very exciting, you know. So those are really what made me decide to really just commit to it. So I, you know, decided to, you know, transition out of my current role, which was a very safe, you know, company position, and decided to take that leap and just go for it. And here I am now, I guess. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, you've essentially landed a job at one of the best companies in tech sales. So again, like huge kudos to you. I'm super excited and stoked for you. Maybe walk us through like what were you trying to do to bridge that gap, right? Like you made the decision to go into tech sales. Like what happened then, right? Like what you said, you found some influencers online, you committed to some other courses. Like what was that process like? Maybe take us through that.
Yeah, so it started off with just, you know, watching some YouTube videos, and I forgot which video I watched, but one of them was like, if you're just continuously watching these YouTube videos, you need to like actually start taking action and get some type of structure. That may have been one of Eric's or someone else's, I can't remember. But from there, I actually signed up for the first course that I could find, which was Course Careers. And I went through that process and, you know, was able to learn a lot about the role, which was great. However, I did feel some things were lacking, like, for example, getting help with the resume. So I actually, you know, at the tail end of that course, I actually hired a professional to redo my resume, LinkedIn, and my cover letter, which was about $550 to actually, so I paid quite a bit of money to get a completely overhauled resume. And that was when I started learning, and I saw the video by Eric about tech sales extension, and I, you know, looked at it and I was like, oh, am I gonna have to spend some more money here? Like, Jesus, you know, was not looking forward to that at all. But you know, I looked at the course, I posted on the video, Eric actually responded, and I kind of thought about it for a little bit. It was everything I was missing currently, which was getting that coaching, getting, you know, feedback from the current things I was doing. And then also being able to jump on a call with people that are currently in the position and really just ask them, you know, how to solve the issues I'm currently having. And yeah, I actually completely redid my professionally done resume after signing up with the course, and, you know, was able to learn strategies from students inside the course and quickly be able to implement those, and, you know, started outreaching on LinkedIn and actually got, you know, 13 interviews shortly after signing up. So yeah.
No, it's great to hear. And like, maybe for those watching, right, that are going through this experience now, kind of a vague question, I'll hand it to you to kind of take it as you want, but like that transition, right? You try some other courses, you pay for a professional resume, you ultimately, you know, rip that up, try something new. Like, how did your thought process evolve throughout that? Maybe major realizations along the way as well.
Yeah, so it was a real battle with, you know, the past things I've done to position myself to get into tech with, you know, the idea of what I thought I would take to get a role. And upon joining Tech Sales Extension, I was actually able to speak with others on that journey so that I could actually learn what they were doing, so I could stop doing certain things that were wasting my time. For example, specifically on the outreach part in terms of LinkedIn and trying to get an interview with sales recruiters and hiring managers, I was able to get a template from a student, fine tune it and make it my own, and then really get success off of that and really start chasing those interviews when I was ready for it after optimizing my resume. And then on top of that, also just like working on the resume, students, you know, they DM'd me after posting my resume on the course, you know, ideas on how I could fix it and fine tune it. And I actually implemented a lot of those strategies, including, you know, one of the courses in Tech Sales Extension that actually goes over how to optimize your strategy to put more qualitative and quantitative points on your resume. because initially I only had one bullet point per job. So I was actually able to, optimize those two things, and basically from there was able to take off running towards a position. But yeah.
Nice. And I'm curious too, like, were there major objections that you found? As an example, right, did the no college degree thing ever come up? Did you make mistakes early on? Curious what that looked like too.
Yeah, so there was a couple different things that I was having an issue with initially, specifically with my outreach to hiring managers and recruiters. I was coming off a little bit too try hard and trying to personalize a little bit too much. Thankfully, I was able to see what other students were doing that had got positions in the course where I could use their template and then optimize it with my background. Luckily, though, I didn't have too much issue with my not having a degree, since I was able to position myself so strongly with my past experience. Before that, though, I did notice I was getting a lot of rejections right off the bat because of my past experience. But, due to my targeted outreach and changing my resume around, I actually was able to switch that around completely thanks to the course.
Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken too, like, weren't you like auto rejected by, was it outreach? But because you messaged someone, like they put you through the process. Is that right?
Yeah, so that's the funny thing is probably because of my background, I did get a lot of rejections from the applications, but most of my interviews I actually got through my LinkedIn outreach, and I got a lot of denials after being set up with a recruiter interview via email, but it didn't matter.
That's awesome, man. And then, maybe, walking through that process even further, right? It's your first time really in a tech sales environment. You're getting to maybe these later stages with some exercises as well. Learnings there, mistakes, things that worked well, etc.
Yeah, so honestly, that was one of the biggest helps of the course, is because I feel like I would have, failed at a lot of the assessments they had in terms of the mock cold calls, and then also having the cold email exercises as well. I was able to use some of the templates in the course, and then, actually go above and beyond, because in the course, they actually have multiple emails that you can go through. So you can write out an entire cadence. So I actually did that specifically with my interview process, and a lot of the recruiters were actually, and the hiring managers were blown away by the responses I was able to come up with, because it was at a high level and it had explanations of why I was doing these certain things. But some of the things I learned specifically from other students as well, that helped me in that process, was actually using ChatGPT to research some of these companies and basically understand how you would pitch it to a customer using ChatGPT. It was very valuable. Granted, you have to fine tune it and change the format completely, because it's not going to just be ready right off the bat. But I was able to do that, thankfully, to a lot of the courses having the examples there for me ready to go. So it was super helpful.
Yeah, like, I mean, I'm curious because like AI is this big buzzword right now, right? But like I think it's cool to see when people are actually, using it to get value out of it. So like maybe could you dive a little bit deeper with, obviously, we have some of that stuff in the course, but your experience personally, because we actually took some of the things that you were doing and we used that as inspiration. We saw that like, hey, this is something that can be scaled. This is something that can be used to like really, really shortcut the amount of time it takes to like do some research in a company, show up prepared. Like when you're going through the process with 10, 15 different companies, it's like impossible to sit down and do all that manual research, right? So maybe walk us through that. I'm sure a lot of people would find value in that. So what exactly did you do? Like, how did you use it? How did it help you out? Like, yeah, like I think that would be super helpful.
Yeah, so initially I really started utilizing ChatGPT because there was 1 week where I had a total of 13 interviews to do and that included 9 different companies. And so I frankly didn't have the time between working full time to really do all the research myself. So I started using ChatGPT because some coworkers and friends were using it and people in the course. And I just would look up what products do they offer, how could this product benefit X company, but then was able to get some insights through the course on how to position the questions a little bit better on what do you need to understand to sell X product to X company. And just also being able to use it to write some cold calls scripts and cold email scripts, it helped me to get a little base format to start with so that I could fine tune it from there. So it probably saved me a good 10 to 20 hours in that week so that I was able to actually come into these interviews. And actually a lot of the interviewers, you know, they commended me for knowing the product so well, when really I just kind of just researched it quickly thanks to ChatGPT and using the right prompts. So it was actually kind of crazy that I got that feedback, considering that I only did it for like maybe an hour to an hour and a half right before the interview most of the time. So yeah.
That's awesome to hear. One of the things that stood out too, is, and I think you did really well, is like, let's not gloss over the fact that you had 13 interviews in a week, right? And like, among many other things, like sometimes I'll see candidates breaking in, like they'll get one interview with one company and they'll be like, oh my God, this is the greatest company ever. I just like, I have to get this job. Did you experience any of that? How did you learn to, and how did you just get so many interviews, right?
Yeah, so actually, when I first joined Tech Sales Extension, the way I thought it was going to look for me personally was that I would just pick my top 10 companies, apply, and maybe I was just being a little unrealistic. And thankfully, talking to other students, I realized the work it actually took to get a position initially would include a lot more of a wider net of casting to make sure that you get as many interviews as possible. So the mistake I made initially is I honed in on 10 different companies, applied to them, was waiting to hear back from them and hoping that I would get that initial interview, and then, you know, maybe outreached too many times on LinkedIn and did it in a way where it was looking a little bit too eager. And so thankfully I switched that thanks to Tech Sales Extension, and really some feedback that you and Chris gave to me. I was able to understand that maybe I shouldn't come off too strong initially with my sales experience and really look to be coachable and get that advice and come in a little bit softer. And I think once I switched that, I was able to score a lot of interviews and find companies that I would really enjoy working for that would position me to be successful in the tech space over the next, 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. And Ben, like just taking a step back too, like, looking back at this process you've just been through, do you have any general advice for people out there, like evaluating tech sales, looking to break in, who are already, trying to break in various different ways? Like, you just went through this process. Like, what advice would you give to somebody who's going through right now or who's evaluating it?
Yeah, so I'd say I have a couple main tips. And honestly, I would say getting outside help is very beneficial and being open. I think that was one of the things that really led me to multiple courses, even though some of them may not have been helpful as others, because then I was able to fine tune my process and be flexible. And I'd say initially, starting off with Course Careers, I was able to learn the overall scope of the role, which was great. And then just kind of lacking that coaching and the basically feedback so that I could optimize my strategy, I've looked elsewhere while also paying to get a resume done. But then being willing, despite paying for a professional resume, to just overhaul it completely based on new feedback that was received in the course, Tech Sales Extension. And then just going from there, just being flexible with it. But then optimizing what you could do from others. That's one thing that I really capitalize on. And that's why I love the course as well, because I was able to, learn from other students that got a job pretty quickly and optimize and utilize those strategies based on my background. And then other than that, I would say just being willing to take that action and being willing to make mistakes, because I made a lot of mistakes along the way. I've gotten a lot of rejection. And sometimes I did look a little bit foolish, with some of my outreach, but being willing to make and take those mistakes is what led me to ultimately getting a role, which is the objective. So just being laser focused and open to, different avenues of getting there, I would say. But yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's a big realization, is we are essentially getting paid to be told no, which is probably why we get paid so much at the higher tiers. But no, I mean, you've been amazing throughout this entire process, Ben, and I think a lot of people out there are gonna, take your advice and probably get a bunch of value out of it. So, really appreciate you coming on here today, and I think a lot of people are gonna find value in this.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I loved it, and thanks to you and Eric, you guys helped me through the entire process. And it's kind of one thing I wanted to mention. Sorry for cutting you off there, Eric, but I was actually shocked by the amount of help that I did get, because I got a lot of feedback from other students, but also you guys were willing to, DM me in the course and jump on the calls each week and answer questions. And then on top of that, even at the tail end of it, when I was negotiating with companies, you guys were able to help me through that process and give me some crucial feedback with picking the right company that would lead to my long-term success. So thanks, guys.
Of course. Thanks, man. And congrats again.